The following program is produced by Marshfield Community Television.
Really excited to have you here. I was so happy when Schnitz called and said that they were thinking about having the meeting here, and then he came to visit and seemed to like it very, very much, and so we're really happy. We are, kind of out alone in the wilderness as far as forestry is concerned, because when we talk about forestry, we always think of it being up north. We all know where up north is. So down here in Burlington, not very many people know that there is a forestry operation. Small though we may be, we actually still are a sustainable forestry operation here at this property, certainly, and also at our sister property, which is just a couple of miles away, called Drumlin Farm. Hopefully, if the weather holds out and you're still feeling like it, we'll go on a bit of a tour of Seno. This property here is 131 acres. We have woodlands, we have prairies, and we also have a really beautiful tamarack wetland. Our sister property, Drumlin Farm, is another 83 acres. There's an absolutely gorgeous spring-fed pond, trails, grassland, woodland, and the story behind these two properties is something that inspires me every single time I come to work. So this property is named Seno after Dr. Elvira Seno, the woman who used to own this property. And she realized as she went on in years that she had something really special. And she wanted to make certain that this property remained something special. In other words, it would continue being a forestry operation, but it would also be dedicated to education and conservation. So here was a woman who became a physician long before women became physicians commonly, like now. And here was also a woman who decided that she wanted to set this land aside in perpetuity really long before people were doing that commonly like they do now. So she found a way to do so, working with the Wisconsin Woodland Owners Association, and then they formed the Wisconsin Woodland Owners Foundation, and she set this property aside in perpetuity so that it would always be used for what she dreamed: forestry, education, conservation. She had no heirs. She had a brother, Les, who died recently, so everybody was on board with it. At the same time she did this, there's a woman by the name of Dr. Shirley Peterson, who was her contemporary, and she owned Drumlin Farm, our sister property. Shirley had sort of a parallel life. She was also a physician, she also had no heirs, and she also realized that she had an amazing piece of property that she didn't want paved over. So she put her land into trust as well. They lived, or at least operated frequently within a couple of miles of each other, and they never even met each other. It's just so amazing. So every time I come here, I think of both of them, and I send up a word of thanks, because look at what they've left us, this amazing legacy of beautiful, viable, open space. There's over 7 billion people on the planet, and the only way we're going to have that sort of thing for future generations is by setting aside our land and then stewarding that land, managing that land. Now, Seno has a funny name, Seno KRLT Conservancy. So Seno, obviously for Dr. Seno, the KRLT is the Kenosha Racine Land Trust. So up until June of 2014, we were two separate organizations. But the leaders of both organizations shared board members, we shared some activities, and we also shared much of the same mission statement. And so they got to talking and they said, well, why don't we just become one organization? Why should we divide it and be doing basically the same things? So that's what happened. Seno and Kenosha Racine Land Trust merged, and it became official June 14th of 2014. So what the Kenosha Racine Land Trust does is operate within Kenosha and Racine counties, and they work with landowners who want to set aside their properties in perpetuity. So, for example, we have a really beautiful, very much loved orchard called Brighton Woods Orchard, not too far from here. And Bill Stone is the man who owns it, and he put his property into trust with us, so we hold the easement on it, the conservation easement. So that land will always stay agricultural in nature. It's not going to be paved over, it's not going to be a subdivision, it's not going to be a Walmart or a Walgreens. It's going to be open, beautiful, viable space for generations to come. So we work with farmers, we work with private landowners, we work with woodland landowners. It doesn't always mean that we take big pieces of land. We have literally a postage-sized piece of land in an area right on the bluff, right on the lake, called Wind Point. And we took that piece of property in trust because what we hope is that in future generations, all of the people that live along their bluff will consider putting their land into trust so that primary environmental corridor, that very fragile piece of the environment, will be preserved, and it won't eventually become a high-rise and all kinds of things. So that's what a land trust does. Any questions about a land trust? Yes, sir.
Who actually owns the land then?
The person who put it into trust. So for example, Bill Stone, the orchardist, he owns his property. And what he did was craft a very specific, very individual document that will go with his property no matter who owns it, whether it's 2016 or 2036 or whatever. So when you're crafting this conservation easement document, you're thinking about 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now. How do you hope that that land will be addressed? It doesn't matter who owns it, that easement travels with it, and it's a legally binding document.
It's a permanent easement?
Permanent easement, absolutely, permanent easement. Some people become so specific that they dictate that only a certain square footage for one more building will be permitted. So we have one of the original farms way on the northeast end of Racine County is in trust with us. And the original barn is there, the original home is there. At some point in time in the early 1900s, the road cut it in half. So on the other side of the road, the house that was built probably in the 50s or 60s is there. That land was being farmed up until about maybe 5 or 7 years ago. And so her easement says that if that land ever goes out of farming, it's to be converted into prairie, much like Chihuahua Prairie, which is a remnant prairie not too far from there. So homeowners, landowners, are the ones who decide how specific it is, right down to the nth degree. So it takes a long time to craft your document because you're really thinking, and sometimes families are involved with it and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they don't care, which is why land gets put into trust, because the kids don't want to farm, they don't want this piece of property, and it seems like nobody really cares, but actually somebody does really care. We are not a government entity. We are a private nonprofit organization, and it's you who decides that you want to put your land into trust, and you contact us. So sometimes it happens. Every year someone will contact us, and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on what's going on.
So are there property taxes on it then?
Yes, but they're reduced. It depends on who's in charge at the time when this happens, who's sitting at the head of the state. But usually what happens is that your property taxes are reduced. Some land trusts, very few, some land trusts have enough money to purchase land from an owner who will approach and say, I really want to put my land into trust. I don't have anybody to give it to. I want it to stay a woodland. And so some land trusts have enough money to purchase land. Most don't. Some landowners donate their land to land trusts. And then other ones, you work it out. You work out the relationship somehow.
I think you answered part of my question,
Okay.
but you're a 501c3.
Yes.
You need to pay taxes, property tax on the land.
Mm-hmm.
You're using that name on somebody else's land.
No.
You're not.
No, we don't use our name on someone else's land. Brighton Woods Orchard is Brighton Woods Orchard until somebody changes the name. Maybe they buy it and they change the orchard's name to their name or whatever, or they turn it into winery or something. But no, we're the holders of the document. So what that means is that we work with the landowner to make certain that the document that the landowner crafted is being fulfilled, so that, you know, there are no violations on the easement. And by and large, with private landowners, there are not. Now, we also work with conservation subdivisions. So conservation subdivisions are enclaves wherein a certain percentage of the land is left as open space, and the developer agrees, at least in theory, to fund the improvement of that land. Either restore a wetland he's destroyed, or put it into a prairie planting, or whatever have you. And then the houses occupy usually about 1 or 2 acres each. And so not very many land trusts do that, but we do. It's kind of on the cutting edge of putting land into trust, so you have good open space. And over the last couple of years, we've enjoyed some success working with the homeowners and pressuring the developers to do what they promised to do, which is a really difficult thing, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Hi.
2 things. First, those of you that have been to the Wisconsin Dells Conference, you'll recall that we had a lengthy session from the Baraboo Range Preservation Association director at the time, David Wernicke, and that's 100% land trust, the whole 9 yards. So there was quite a lengthy explanation or discussion of what was going on in that part of the country, you know, very similar to what you folks do here.
Yes.
And then secondly, one thing that David did not talk a lot about, but if you would like to comment a few minutes, particularly on the smaller parcels, how do you work out challenges with the neighbors?
So first I'll say that's one reason why a lot of land trusts don't deal with smaller parcels. It just depends on the significance of the parcel. Generally, adjoining people don't care. They don't even understand what's going on. And they don't even know what's going on, because the moment you put your land into trust, it looks the same as it did the day before or the day after. Some people choose to put signs on their property saying that this is a conservancy property, it's held into trust, blah, blah, blah. But generally, we don't have any difficulties in terms of private owners putting their land into trust. When we do run into difficulties, it has to do with dealing with the homeowners in a conservation subdivision who didn't read the document, didn't realize, no, you can't build that thing over there. You can build it in your yard, but you can't build it over there. So that is very, very difficult. It's sometimes a very contentious situation. We've enjoyed some terrific successes, and we've had to navigate some really horrible situations. But usually with the private easements, it's not a problem, because they want this. They want this, and they have a vision. Yes?
So are your private, even the small parcels, are they open to the public, or is there restricted use of it?
If you're a private homeowner, it's your private home. Now, if you decide you want to let people on it, that's fine if you want to do it. I don't know that we would urge you to do that, because, you know, it's your private, it's your residence, basically. So we're open to the public every single day of the year, dawn to dusk. Drumlin Farm is open to the public, same way. We own a couple of properties off of the freeway along the Des Plaines River. Those are all open to the public. The conservation areas of the conservation subdivisions are private. They're not open to the public, unless the homeowner association decides, well, we want to do an annual thing and invite people in and teach them about conservation subdivision. But that's totally up to them.
So does your website tell which ones are open and which ones aren't?
It does, yes. Now here at Seno and at Drumlin, we operate under managed forest law, which I'm assuming pretty many of you know what that is. So it's either open MFL or it's closed MFL. Seno is closed MFL. So there's like 3 people who hunt on our property. We were open MFL at Drumlin we were closed at Drumlin for a long time. At some point in time, long before I joined the the show. That changed, and the people who hunted there didn't like it very much because they just felt like it was their private hunting ground, and now it wasn't anymore. So we're kind of reviewing things over there. Yeah, good questions.
Back to the NFL.
Yes.
Then how do you control the volume once it becomes open? And that's a challenge, right? You know, a couple people think it is a private place and it works out great. Then once it turns open, some places just get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And how do you monitor? And that's why a lot of people keep it closed.
Yeah.
Because they want to be able to control that volume. And you know, once you become open, you're on the map. You're almost like a target.
Yeah.
And some places that are highly desirable just get overwhelmed. So how do you deal with that?
I don't think that we've ever had a problem like that at Drumlin. Drumlin is off the path. It's a little bit more difficult for people to find. And when you drive up into the little short drive, it looks like somebody's living there. And there's a whole story about the beautiful property next to it, which if we have time, I'll tell you about. It's about collaboration, which we were talking a lot about. So we don't seem to have very much trouble with it. If this one were open, I would say that that might be a challenge for us because it is easier to find. This is a very heavily trafficked road. And hunters look at the website that tells them, you know, where is the MFL property? So that might be a problem for here. But thus far, we haven't had that difficulty. And if we did, I'm not really sure how would we do that? How would we monitor it? I don't know.
Well, that's it. Once it becomes open, you lose control.
Yeah.
And eventually, it can become a target.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I mean, you have the public notice, and you can't stop anybody.
Right, exactly. We are talking very seriously about doing closed MFL on Drumlin now. Anyway, not because we were overrun, there are just other things. It's the collaboration we have ongoing with the other organization that's just the most wonderful organization. And we don't want them to feel like, you know, there's hunters out there when they need to be out there.
Well,
And yeah.
I don't know if you're right. They just revamped that entire MFL.
Right.
And there's a lot of new changes, so you are now going to be able to release it.
Yeah.
Where that was prohibited for a long time.
Yeah, and in fact, we're having a meeting next week about that. We're going to talk about the changes and how it affects us and what we can do and what we can't do. So things will probably change a little bit.